All right, folks, hold on to your butts. Today we are talking about our worst films of 2018. That and more on today's episode of The Real Review. So stay tuned. Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. Everybody, I am here with Joel likes to make snarky faces at me, Cunningham.
You came up with that on the spot.
Yeah,
I have a
did.
feeling.
Well, I had a different one, but then you changed my mind.
Yeah, I was making more of a I'm not happy to be here
Okay.
face. Yes,
Face.
we're once again returning to our land of unhappiness. Or at least I am.
Right.
I have to remember all these films.
It was harder for me to come up with a worst of list than you. Yes. I know.
Yes, yeah. I wonder why that is.
Who am I today, Joel?
I am here with Matt Monkey Noises Hey.
Monkey noises. When did I make monkey noises?
Like 2 minutes ago.
Oh, really?
You were trying to do Yoda, but it sounded more like a monkey, so I don't think you realized.
It wasn't actually Yoda.
Yeah,
It was the Seagulls. It was the
Yeah, the
Seagulls
Seagulls,
song.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it was from.
But that's what I got.
Anyways, welcome everybody to the show. It is so good to have you. The Real Review, we just celebrated 100 episodes, which is super cool. We have a contest going on right now. Let's talk about that real fast. You can get entered in to win a contest basically to go with Joel and myself, if you live here, obviously here in Arizona, to the movies, and we'll buy your ticket and some concessions, and we'll debate the movie with you afterwards. All you got to do is go to facebook.com, Instagram, find the post there. You got to like it, follow, and then comment, hashtag RealReview100.
Yeah, we've already got a bunch of people in, and we'd love to have you join and be a part of the contest celebrating our 100 episodes.
Absolutely. And also, just in case, today's a little different because we're not reviewing movies specifically where we have lists that we're going over, but typically the Real Review, Joel's a little bit more cynical, critical, analytical, and all the alls and all those things, and potentially more negative. I'm a little bit more maybe positive, optimistic, like, you know, did I have fun? Was it impactful to me? And I'll tend to overlook some of those things. Or
glass half empty guy.
But it's not to say that we can't, dabble in each other's territory a little bit. And, so that's how that works. We bring those together, give you the Real Review. And Joel, how can people get connected with us?
Well, Matthew, there's a number of good ways to get connected to the podcast and the vidcast. The realreviewmedia.com, which is our website. We'd love to have you check us out on there. And then additionally, Facebook, which is where we're doing the contest, where we post a lot of our content. We just posted, I think, some cool posters that came out for some movies. Probably going to be doing some trailer reactions as well.
Yeah, John Wick and Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
And
then you can find us there on facebook.com/realreviewmedia. And then additionally, we have Twitter and Instagram, which are both at Real Review Media. And then we have our YouTube, youtube.com/TheRealReview.
Yep.
And then last but not least, we'd love to hear your thoughts and perspectives of the year that has gone by in 2018 and anything else you want to talk to us about. We try to be in communication with our listeners and fans and followers and all that stuff. realreviewmedia@gmail.com if you want to reach us directly.
Absolutely. Well done, Joel.
Thank you.
Back to you, Stan. Okay, wait. No, this is not a news break, I guess.
Not at all.
Okay.
I wish we could throw it back to Stan, because now we're going to go into some tough territory.
Let's see what's going on in sports over with Steve.
Okay. Go cry in a corner.
Yep. So we are going to be talking about our top 10 with some dishonorable mentions, by the way. Our top 10 worst films of 2018. We're going to start that. If you watched or listened to last episode, you heard our best of list and some honorable mentions. This is the opposite of that. It's the less fun version of that. And
it's more fun for some.
Maybe for you, huh?
Well, I think for listeners, probably more fun because we sit here and we just bash on films for the next, whatever.
Sure.
But for me, it tends to leave me a little bit
right.
So foul-mooded.
So so here's the thing. I feel like Joel's seen more bad movies than I have this year, and I haven't seen all the movies. We both haven't seen all the movies. So we'll preface that with saying, hey, these are just the worst movies that we've seen. We know there's a ton of bad ones out there. We just don't get a chance to see them all. So we'll go with that.
But I see them all, man.
You see them all. Okay.
Accidentally on purpose.
Okay, let's start off with our dishonorable mentions.
Can I say this as well? We mentioned this in the best of, but these aren't necessarily the worst reviewed. So some of these are going to have higher ratings than where we actually place them on our list than others, and that's really just because we tend to base this more on our personal impression of the film. And try to impartially look at a film and say like the good merits of it and can actually rate it higher than my personal experience with it. But really where I went with this was, how did this film impact me, and what were the negative feelings that I had towards it in putting it together?
What were the negative feelings? You're like, I hate it.
I can't talk about it on the podcast because it's, kid listeners maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So with that, we can get into the...
Let's do some dishonorable mentions. Now, I only have one on my list, but you have like 3, you said?
I do, yeah.
How about you roll
Starting
through
off
your
strong.
3?
So my 3, for different reasons, but Overboard,
Okay.
Ocean's 8,
Okay.
and Life of the Party. For different reasons, again, Overboard and Ocean's 8 both felt very unnecessary.
Okay.
I felt like they were trying to cash in on the popularity of something else and do it kind of like a new spin off of like where we're at in our society now is ready for this like re-energized version or different version. But both ended up flopping. They were both, I think, very poorly written. It had nothing to do with really casting, but there was no dynamics. They lost both of them, I should say, lost the spirit of the original and the interest that I had in them. And I love the Ocean's 8 or the Ocean's films for the most part, the originals, the original remakes, I should say.
Yeah.
And then additionally, Overboard, the original Overboard is kind of like it's a cult classic of a sort. Life of the Party, I put it on a dishonorable mention here just because there's going to be, I will explain reasons later, but I really did not enjoy it. But there's reasons for why this is only on the dishonorable mentions that we will get to later in the recording.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I actually haven't seen any of those movies, so I'm glad you got a chance to take the brunt of those hits for me. I appreciate it.
There you go.
All right, my dishonorable mention is the first Purge. Okay. And it's not a terrible movie. There's actually some stuff in it that's okay. It just happened to fall, and it wasn't as bad as the other 10 movies that I'm about to talk about. Okay. So, at the same time, you don't get a sense of like the characters of why it's happening. It had a chance to explore like the original, where the Purge came from, and it just did it in a really sloppy way, and you didn't get a chance to really get a sense of it. Just glossed over it, basically. Let's just say that could have been the interesting part of the story, but it's just a muahaha kind of guy behind the scenes is what it ended up being. But yeah, so that's my dishonorable mention.
There you go. And I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
So we both had ones we didn't get a chance to see.
So complimentary. We are so complimentary.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where our negatives kind of line up in this, because as we've stated, we don't talk to each other when we put these lists together. We just do them
that
on our own.
That kind of makes it fun.
It does. It's a surprise.
It's a surprise.
Yeah.
Well, Joel,
yes.
That brings us to number 10. What is our 10 worst film?
All right.
10th worst film of the year.
Starting off strong, at least for me. One that might surprise some people, but it's a film called Venom.
Ooh.
Yeah. I came into Venom actually really excited for it, and that may be part of it. Venom is Spider-Man is probably my favorite superhero we've talked about. Venom, out of all the sort of nemesises Nemesi, whatever you want to call them, that Spider-Man has faced, is probably one of my favorite, probably top 3, if not the top 1. And I really was excited to kind of see it have its own standalone flair, its own standalone feeling.
Yeah.
And there's been inklings of that in the original trilogy that came out with Tobey Maguire. And so I was like, okay, cool. We're going to like get a Venom, and maybe that'll tie into the whole cinematic universe somehow, eventually, maybe, potentially, even though they're kind of like different studios and stuff. And really just didn't get anything from it. I was disappointed. I felt like the characterization they gave Venom in the film was silly at times and kind of stupid.
Yeah.
The jokes that they made and the zaniness, in a sense, of...
Not a fan of the zany, huh?
No, not in this film. I can love zany in a comedy, but like Tom Hardy's impression of the character within this, of being Eddie Brock, was like, one moment he's this strong, independent, like, guy that goes out there and just does what needs to be done. And then the next moment he's like completely crazy and he's like freaking out and it's like he's weak and sad and biting. And it was just silly. And it felt like what they did to me a lot of times was like, this was originally like an R film that they cut back to a PG-13.
Totally.
And then just the edit was so jarring, and so it was like simultaneously boring because I knew where everything was going, mixed with I have no idea what's going on. Like, things are just jumping around, stuff's just happening. I don't know what this is driving towards. The main villain is kind of like this he's like a hero, anti-hero guy. It's
Yeah.
like I didn't really know what they were going for with the villain. So it just really fell flat for me.
I
And
gotcha.
also Jenny Slate, I'm sorry, she does not play very good, serious, dramatic action movie
Yeah.
role, and I
Yeah.
know her role in this was very limited, but everything about it was just kind of like,
When I think of
"Wah."
Venom, I thought the movie was okay.
Yeah.
But when I think of Venom, I think of all the negative criticism it got just from the trailers before the movie even came out.
Yeah, the only thing I ever said about the only thing that I had with the trailers is that I'm really gonna try and let it be what it is when it
Yeah.
comes out in the theaters, because I know the trailers can be super misleading.
Yeah, for sure.
But the only thing that I consistently remember about the Venom movie, which is not a good thing, is just the whining that Venom did.
Yeah.
Well, when I was on my whole planet,
Yeah.
these guys made fun of that. Just is like the only thing about the film that stood out, and that's like not a good thing. That's not who Venom is.
Yeah.
In my mind.
It's
So
true.
yeah, I mean, I know they'll make a sequel too, which also kind of ticks me
Yeah.
off because it made bazillions of dollars.
Yeah.
And it also got a really high fan.
It made $1
user.
billion.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
Well, and people reviewed it very well
Yeah.
outside of critics, so it'll
Audience
get a
scores.
sequel. Yeah, the audience scores and the money alone will warrant a sequel. But I'm not looking forward to it.
I'm
don't think it'll be good.
I'm looking forward to a sequel because I feel like they have a chance to make it better.
I feel like that would be what if I was the optimist like
Yeah.
you are. That's
I'm
what
the
I would
optimist.
think. Yeah.
Woody Harrelson's gonna be in it.
There you go.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 10 is Mortal Engines.
Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this was the film that misled everybody to think that this film was directed by Peter Jackson, and it's not directed by Peter Jackson.
I thought you were going to say it misled everyone to make them think it was a good movie.
Right. So
Which is like a lot of these, I guess.
this movie has a lot of problems. The marketing, none of the trailers were ever good for this movie. They never really explained what it was. They didn't really create a lot of buy-in or excitement or hype. That's what a trailer is supposed to do. The movie itself, though, it doesn't have. It's so forgettable. But I will say it's at the top of my worst of list because it does have that my guilty pleasure like post-apocalyptic vibe.
Yeah.
And I've always liked seeing how different artists like imagine like a post-apocalyptic world, and the visuals were really, really good. Outside of that, I don't remember the characters, and I wasn't emotionally connected to any of the characters. I didn't care if anybody died. There was this huge story about like this guardian and then the main person, and that's the thing I kind of cared about, but it was more just for this like robot thing. And yeah, I cared more for a robot in this movie than any of the people.
Yeah.
And it was just like you didn't get to linger on any of the sets or anything very long. When something was interesting, it'd go to something else, and it'd cut to someone else that was way less interesting. There's a person that was in the beginning of the movie that thought was going to be important. They didn't show up again till like the last act of the film, and I was like, oh, I forgot this person was even in the movie.
Yeah.
It was just bad. Anyways. Mortal Engines.
Yeah. It's one I didn't have a chance to see
Yeah.
either. So
Okay.
I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt because I didn't know anything about it.
I always give every movie the benefit of the doubt.
I don't.
Yeah.
You know me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was like, well, it's based on a book. It's a completely, in a
Right.
sense, new type of
Right.
movie. But yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just
Okay.
avoid it.
Yeah. What you got next? What's number 9?
Number 9, a film called Peppermint.
Oh, okay. That's
Do you
on your
remember
worst
that?
of list?
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that movie was okay.
Yeah, it's another one for people that maybe it got a decent high
Audience
percentage of audience scores.
Yeah.
But for me, it catered to like all the lowest common denominator type cliches of action thriller genres, and it feels like a movie that would have come out like 10 years ago, but with like a bigger budget.
The main thing I didn't like about that movie was the editing.
Yeah, the editing was stupid and
Yeah.
bad.
And the music.
The music was awful. I felt like Jennifer Garner's role in the film. So it's your stereotypical sort of revenge thriller film with like, people crazy gunfighting and shooting. And maybe it's just me, but I'm like tired of these films that feature like endless hordes of like bad guys getting shot down by one overpowered person.
John Wick?
Yeah, I mean the thing that I'll say is there's a caveat with that is that when it takes place in kind of a fictional world, like John Wick has kind of separated itself because it doesn't even really, it feels like more of a fable.
Yeah.
With this feels like it's very grounded in reality. Like
Sure.
they're trying to make this Peppermint character like very real and very, this is our world. But she just happens to be somehow become this amazing assassin that is like capable of killing like hundreds of, thugs, bad guys, and outsmarting them.
Yeah.
And it's one of those films where, again, it's like she'll walk into a room and suddenly everybody becomes a moron, because she has to kill everybody. They become idiots. They're like, oh, well, I guess I can't shoot under something, or, like, oh no, she blocked me. I have to like run over here and put my arms in the air. I don't know. So it was just one of those movies that just, it hit all the stupid realms of me, and the action wasn't suspenseful. I didn't care about her character or the struggle that she's going through. It was weird because I'm like,
it's a really horrific thing that she went through.
Exactly. She went through such a horrific thing, but it felt so manipulated to me. It felt so like we have to just put her in this really crazy scenario that I didn't feel sorry for her as the character,
Yeah.
In real life I absolutely would, but in this film I'm like, it feels so manipulated. They're buying ice cream at the carnival and having fun as a family. Oh no, they're dead.
It did hit a lot of like cliche stereotypes with that type of genre. I didn't think it was great or good for that matter, but I thought it was okay.
Yeah. It was like a cheaper version of a Liam Neeson action movie, and there's some of those I
thought it was better than Taken 2 or 3 still.
I haven't seen them.
You haven't seen Taken 2 or 3?
Nope.
You don't need to.
Yeah, that's
Taken 1 is where it's at.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
So overall, this movie kind of was just like a drop in the bucket as far
Right.
as like overall negative feelings. But after I saw the movie, I just was angered for a few days about it because it just felt like Jennifer Garner. That was like that
You
was
really
the thing.
carry him with you for a long time. 2
Negative.
days?
That's what I'm saying. When
I get over a movie in like a day.
Nah, see,
like how it made me
that's what
feel.
I'm
It
talking
doesn't
about.
stay with me that long.
When I watch a bad film or when we talk about like this is going to impact me for a little while because I'm regurgitating stuff that's like really been bad
oh my gosh.
for me.
Okay.
So I'm doing this for you, podcast. Doing this for you.
So my number 9.
Yeah.
My number 9 is on the list because of the disappointment factor. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the worst reviewed movie, but it just means that maybe it hit me hard and I was disappointed in a big way.
Yeah.
And it is The Predator.
Okay.
I loved The Predator growing up, 1 and 2. 1 was always a best so. And this, I was hoping for like a return to form. Shane Black directed it. He was in the original Predator. I'm like, if anybody could bring this thing back, it's going to be Shane Black. And it wasn't. It was awful. There was a lot of cringy like moments with dialogue. The characters, the way that some things were written, some of the story beats were cheesy.
Yeah.
The way they ended it was a huge eye roll.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. And it was like they were trying to set up this big thing and it didn't even start. You can't set up a sequel if you can't get people to go see the first one to begin with, know, and it's just not good. I was so disappointed let down. So that's why The Predator is on my list. You didn't like it either, right?
I did not. We might be talking about it at some point.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talking more about it.
Let's do that then. What's your number 8?
My number 8 is an interesting film. It's called Red Sparrow. Which is, I think, one that you didn't have a chance
These sound
to see.
like no good plan.
Yes,
Yes.
this is not great Russian, but he's better than Jennifer Lawrence Russian.
Yes, it was please.
Yes.
50-50.
I felt like that was one of the big things. I mean, there was moments literally where Jennifer Lawrence's Russian accent would slip into like American.
Really?
Yeah, and it was like, that was just one of the things, but she was so unbelievable as this like femme fatale type
Like
character.
unbelievable?
Yeah, no.
Like unbelievable,
no,
man.
more than the negative.
Oh, okay.
I think if you went unbelievable.
See, my unbelievable is a positive unbelievable.
Unbelievable. That's more of the way I would say it. She was completely, her character had this like, you're trying to relate to her and connect to her because she's had this like unjust circumstance that's been thrust upon her because of the actions of 2 people.
Yeah.
And the problem with setting something like that up in the beginning of the story is that you completely remove her from where she was at and the reason for why she's doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
When you take her out of that, then it's like, well, now I can't connect where the story has come from.
Yeah.
So I have to reinvent and regurgitate reasons and figure out reasons for why I understand where she's at.
For sure.
And I never did that. It did this. It tried to do this weird, like, I think that's what they call it, but it's like sexpionage type thing where it's like,
Never heard of that.
lots of nudity and, femme fatale and, seductress type stuff. But that just doesn't translate for me with Jennifer Lawrence. I've never gotten that she's more of like the girl next door kind of character, maybe with like some mental issues and kind of like that. She is the strong, independent type person as well, but she doesn't play, like she doesn't have that air of like, ooh, Jennifer Lawrence. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But
I gotcha.
The plot felt very predictable and stupid. You kind of knew where everything was going. They kind of tried to throw some curveballs at you at certain times. The violence at times was like over the top, like weird. I was like, whoa, this is going really too intense for what this film is trying to be. The story was stupid. I didn't care. There was no like sense of like who the overall villain was in the film. And so overall, really did not like it. I ended up coming out of the film feeling worse off as a human.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I feel like every time you see a bad movie, your life has dramatically changed for the worse.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it someday, but when you go see a movie, you get an experience from it, and these films happen to have some very negative experiences.
I'm able to shake these things off for some reason. I know, I remember I don't like it and the reasons why, but whatever. Yeah. Anyways, let me bring it back over to number 8 on my side, Sounds good. That is A Wrinkle in Time. And this movie is directed well. I think Ava DuVernay did well, but it was so weird. Yeah. It was just a weird movie. I thought the story was weak. I get the plight of like the family element, the father-daughter element. But I will say this movie made me mad with the choice that Chris Pine made as the father towards the end of the film. I was like, this defeats the purpose of this whole connection. Like, why did he do that just now? And I remember feeling really upset about that. It didn't take me a day to shake it off or whatever, but I slept it off later that night, sure. Yeah. But it was just such a weird film. Like, and then at the end, they started doing these like your trademark sound where you're like, huh? Huh? Yeah. What is going on? It was just incomprehensible. The characters were weird. I didn't care about any of the characters except for the main character. They wanted to try and make the brother like a main piece too, but he was kind of like annoying a little bit. Okay. Man, I had a hard time with this movie. I was disappointed. I was excited for it, and it just did not live up to any expectations from Ava's previous work. But that's it. A Wrinkle in Time. Bam.
All right.
What's your number 7?
Number 7, a film called Solo, a Star Wars story.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I just watched this last night.
Yeah, I mean, it's on Netflix now.
Yeah.
Not planning on watching it again. We've talked about this in the past.
One of the worst movies of the year?
Oh, yeah. We talked about this in the past. One of the things that goes a long way for me in a film is good cinematography. And I can forgive a lot of acting issues or plot issues if a film has good, decent cinematography, probably to my fault.
Okay.
Because there's times where I'm like, this movie's bad, but I love cinematography.
Okay.
This movie had really, really bad cinematography to the point where there was time. I don't know if they fixed it up for like the Blu-ray or the release into theaters or home systems or whatever. But I mean, there's literally times where you can't like see people's faces almost, and it's not like it's purposefully being done because they're in like a dark environment.
I think it was.
But there was numerous occasions. Yeah. There was like 3 or 4 times I'm like, I think that's Han. I think that's what they're. But I don't know. So that was one of the big issues for the film for me was the cinematography.
Okay.
Secondarily, I didn't expect a lot from this because one, it's Ron Howard, which I don't have any personal issues with Ron Howard, but he tends to make very cookie cutter safe type films. Mm-hmm. But this film just didn't go anywhere. The main relationship between Han and Kira in the film felt very flat to me. It felt more of like forced circumstantial type situations. Yeah, forced.
Pun intended.
Than actual like love and being jilted and pushed apart type thing. Mm-hmm. The twists of the plot were also quite predictable and kind of not unrealistic, but they were just kind of like motivated by where the plot needed to go because of the fact that this is Han and he has to go to a certain direction in order to eventually meet up with, Luke and Leia and all them. So that was bad. And then this marked one of the first Star Wars movies that it ended, and I'm like, I have no interest to kind of see where it's going. That I've personally seen. Even with the original trilogy, I was like, well,
this movie wasn't needed.
I'm still kind of, no, but like they left it open for that sequel aspect, and they tried to throw in this big shocker type reveal. And I was like, what? It felt very manipulated to just kind of be a shock so that way you would have interest moving into the next film. So, yeah. And overall, it was just and even with Alden and
Aaron Reich.
As Han, he just felt like a very flat version of Han. He never felt like, and then people say, oh, well, he was young and he wasn't quite himself yet, but he didn't have that imbued sense of just like dynamic. And I didn't need to know where Han came from. I kind of liked the idea of knowing that he came from this like checkered background.
That was the part I didn't
make
like.
up.
I didn't like
whatever.
that part in the movie. That was the main part. I was like, that's bad.
There's
he got his name in a specific way. I was like, what? Get out of here.
There's many things about this that I could talk that I didn't like. I didn't like the whole rise of the droid rights, and the romantic relationship between Lando and her, potentially that's implied in the weird way that she's like in the ship now, and the whole run that they did over the
castle run.
The castle run was like very unclimactic and very obvious. It just, everything about it was just like, this isn't Star Wars to me. It just feels very like, meh.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, because of that, and not because it's a bad, that's the thing, we talked about this. It's not because it's a bad film. I think I gave it like a C or C plus or something like that. But it's really just my experience that I got from it, was not a good one. And I left it going like, angry.
Gotcha.
So there you go.
I gotcha. My number 7 is Axel. Robot dog made by bad war people in the government. Super generic everything. It was like it's kind of like trying to be Transformers light, like the first Transformers movie.
It seemed like a combination of Transformers
and it's PG,
and
that's
Short-Circuit.
That's a bad thing. I think maybe some kids like the idea, might have enjoy it, but like the main people in the movie are like teenagers, and so I don't know if they're trying to appeal to a teenage demographic, why not do PG-13 and make up the action or the ante a little bit? But it's a PG movie, and action is vanilla, like light even, and the characters are, the acting is not good all the way around. There's like these really silly conflicts throughout the film, and the way that it ended, you could just tell that it was kind of like low budget. Like it ended up just being like a helicopter versus the dog. Like, this war machine dog versus one helicopter. like
what is gonna happen?
It's kind of like, that's all we can afford, guys.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's like a joke from Deadpool. That
so I could see maybe some kids liking it, like younger kids.
Yeah.
Not teenagers though. I don't know who they're aiming for with this, but I did not care for this film. Okay. The end. That is Axel.
Awesome. Then I'll get into my number 6.
Do it.
Worst 6. So this is another one that people might flip their tables or something a little bit at.
Okay.
Really didn't like this movie. Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Oh, come on, flip the table. Okay. But the worst of the year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, was a film for great cinematography. I mean, it's CG, but
great videography.
Great job with the CG. Voice acting is fine. It didn't feel phoned in.
Yeah.
But the story, which is so strong in animated films to me.
Sure.
There is like so little to this story that I actually enjoyed, and actually felt angry about some of the ways, that they move the characters forward.
Okay.
Specifically with Ralph and Daphne, Vanellope. Ralph and Vanellope, yeah.
What movie do you watch?
It felt like they needed to go in some direction with the characters, and so they were trying to give them growth motivations throughout the film.
Growth ovations.
But by doing so, they more or less had to take all of the relationship that they had put together over the course of the first film, which was rocky in the first film, and kind of had to manipulate circumstances into getting the two of those characters angry at each other.
Sure.
It never felt real, never felt righteous. Like if these were two people in real life, I would be like, you're both being idiots.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Like if the film was trying to make that message the thing, then that's great, but it wasn't.
Yep.
It was trying to go with, well, this person's right and this person's wrong. So I didn't enjoy that. I thought the overall humor was not anywhere near as creative or funny. It felt like, to me, the Emoji Movie light. It felt like they were taking, parts of the internet that we all know. I mean, they did.
Was it better than the Emoji Movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Better than the Emoji Movie, but I don't want to talk about the Emoji Movie.
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. But so overall, going into the film, I also had very high expectations because the first Ralph film was one of my favorites of that year. I mean, I thought it was a really good film, really inventive, and done better than I would have expected. And so this did not make me happy. I did not enjoy it. There was nothing from it that I came out and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I invested the time that I did into that movie.
But really, we're never glad to invest time in these worst of movies.
I know, but usually I can find some redemptive quality, like a character story arc or an animation thing. But this one, there was nothing about it that gave me well, at least that.
Slaughter World. What was the name of that?
I think it was Slaughter World, yeah.
Or something? Yeah.
But that whole plot line felt really silly and manipulated. I mean, we talked about this in the actual review, which you can go back and listen to, but, Vanellope's character is literally coded by humans to fit within a certain video game that in the first movie they substantiated, and I'm going way too detail here, but they substantiated that literally that's her game. And then the second film they suddenly go, nope, well, just because she likes it better, she fits even better in a different. So it just it kind of simultaneously sucked as a film, but then also ruined elements of the prior one.
Yeah.
So, and not majorly, but somewhat. So that's why I'm putting it at my number 6.
Okay. My number 6 is The Possession of Hannah Grace. And actually this last 6 here are going to have a lot of similar qualities and reason why they're bad in my list. So just be prepared for that. Okay, so The Possession of Hannah Grace. Really scary concept. Lady works in a morgue, not graveyard shift, only one in this giant facility. And it's dark, creepy, and this body comes to life and starts haunting her. And I thought the trailers were pretty scary. But the movie's not. It's PG-13, and anytime there's a movie like that where I feel like it started off with the idea of it being rated R, kind of like you talked about earlier, and they scale it back to PG-13, it's hardly ever good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jump scares. Some of them not earned at all, and some of them aren't even things to be afraid of, like a cat, kind of thing.
The worst one is when they jump scare you with a reflection of the person.
So stuff like that. There is the one redeeming quality of this movie is there is a couple of really there's maybe one tense moment that I was like, ooh, I don't like this. But that was it. I was like, okay, that was an effective tension building scary thing that just happened.
Yeah.
But that was it. Other than that, it was kind of boring. And not nearly as scary as I feel like it could have been.
Yeah.
But yeah, Possession of Hannah Grace, not worthwhile this year for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What you got? Number 5.
Number 5. I feel like this might be one you mentioned at some point, but it's a film called Holmes and Watson.
Hey.
I think based upon the quick review that I gave it when we were talking about it, people might have thought this was going to be higher on my list. But really what it came across as to me was a series of individual sketches about two characters pretending to be Holmes and Watson.
Right.
That's really what it felt like.
Yeah.
So it was a very disjointed feeling movie.
I get that.
And the biggest thing about this, because it's such a strong series of comedies with John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell, is what is the humor like? And nothing about the humor in the entire film even really made me chuckle. And so it failed in pretty much every regard, because pretty much every scene was just a setup for you to laugh. Yeah. And I never laughed. And the plot, I wasn't even expecting the plot to be intelligently put together because it's stupid, but it's like they took the dumbest aspects of what they could think of for parodying Holmes and Watson, and then try to tie that into modern cultural issues, but in a purely infantile way. Yeah. And then try to turn that into comedy. And it didn't work in any regard. There was nothing humorous about any of the characters. There wasn't one standout character that I'm like, okay, well, at least they were redemptive to the film. There was more of almost cameo type roles with the secondary characters where they would just kind of show up briefly to play this dumb role and then they would be gone out of the film.
Right.
And Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly can be really funny together.
Yeah.
I mean, Talladega Nights is one of my favorites. Step Brothers is kind of mixed, but I still think it's funny. But yeah, this was just like the worst of their humor for an hour and a half. You know what I mean? And I wasn't expecting anything. That's the thing. Like I was like, this came out of nowhere. I wasn't even expecting the movie to come out.
When you have a low bar already, to still be disappointed is a big deal.
And I think the thing that they've always done, and this is kind of it with their comedies, is that there's this energy or this like sense of like suspense with their comedy that you never really know what they're going to say or where they're going to go with it. But this one, like, because maybe it was tied to Holmes and Watson, everything felt so flagged. Yeah. So, like, okay, I know exactly where this is going to go. Okay, well, he's going to pretend to be a really good boxer because we saw that in the Sherlock Holmes remakes, but he's going to fail it miserably, you know? So that, it fell flat for me. And I would rank it further down the line of being a worse film if I had gotten angry by it, but I wasn't expecting anything from it personally. So it was just kind of like stupid, waste of time, but I'm not as angry about it as some of the ones we have coming.
I gotcha. Yeah, I have one that I'm upset about coming next for my number 5, and that is the Cloverfield Paradox.
Oh,
okay. So I love the Cloverfield movies. I know you know as much on the first one, but I really like the first one. It set the stage for found footage, the whole mystery box that J.J. Abrams creates in his filmmaking, producing roles. And then 10 Cloverfield Lane was one of my favorite movies of that year. I really love that. And it's got that whole sci-fi thing potentially that I really liked. And what was really cool about 10 Cloverfield Lane is they gave you your first announcement and trailer 2 months before the movie came out.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is so cool. And this one was like, I knew something was coming out, but I didn't know when it was coming out. And then they were like, during the Super Bowl, they showed a trailer and they're like, this will be on Netflix after the game.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like super hyped to go watch it. And
the next Cloverfield, they'll drive to your house and throw DVDs through your window.
J.J. Abrams delivers it personally.
There you go. Yeah.
No, it was so disappointing. Like, I liked some of it. I liked the setup, but you could tell they were trying to make it bigger than what their budget allowed it for.
Yeah.
It was nonsensical at times, and the reasoning behind making things nonsensical and why things were happening, it was just because, well, this thing happened, and so just weird things are going to happen, just nonsensical things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then they tried to tie it into make it like a trilogy at the end, tie it into the first one, and I was like, that doesn't work. You know, I was like, it just didn't work. I was so disappointed because I was so excited. So this is probably the biggest thing on my list of my excitement, just being utterly disappointed for it. Because I was just like rolling on that hype train. I love the first two. This was total letdown, but yeah.
Well, and I would say this isn't on my worst of list. I think mainly because I was expecting it to be bad.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Right. We talked about 10 Cloverfield Lane, but it definitely did an arc up there. The original Cloverfield I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
And so what tipped it off for me is with a lot of these films where they don't have a huge budget to make something out of, they always do their best to bring in the biggest names they can find. Yeah. Because it's like, well, we don't have a great budget. We don't have like all this stuff to help us out. At least let's get some big names in there so people will be interested. And so it kind of felt like that. It felt like we don't have a lot of stuff that going for this film except for the names or the name of the film. Yeah. And then also hopefully the actors. Yeah. But yeah.
All right. Well, what you got number 4, homie?
So you mentioned that the Cloverfield Paradox was probably your biggest letdown.
Yeah.
This film was probably one of my top biggest letdowns, probably the top biggest letdown of the year. It's a film that you mentioned called The Predator.
Hey.
Yeah. Like you said, the original Predator is such a favorite of mine in so many ways. It was like the right place, right time. I was just getting into really watching cinema and experiencing different types of films that I'd never watched before. And when I watched The Predator, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good, so crazy and off the wall, but like intense and cool and sci-fi-y. And the second one was somewhat disappointing, but it was still fun and quirky, and it felt within the same spirit overall, even though it went in some very strange directions, of the first film. And then we had, the Predators movie, and the remakes, and this was like, well, hopefully it feels like now they're trying to do it right. They're trying to bring back the original.
I thought the Predators was okay.
Yeah, with bringing back Shane Black and really, they've done it wrong. Like, let's try and really get the idea of what the Predator movies should be about back. Alien versus Predator was just like garbage to me. So this film was just a letdown in so many ways. It was stupid.
Yeah, it was.
Like, that's the biggest thing. The plot made no sense. People just made decisions in the plot that were just completely motivated out of like, well, we have to do something here, so we're going to do it. So the decisions of the characters made absolutely no sense at all. It felt weirdly mean-spirited at times towards some of the characters that like didn't deserve to die as gruesomely as they did.
Yeah.
And then one of the main villains of the film that they built up the entire film as being a main villain that you expect is going to have this gruesome end, they don't even show you that person dying.
Right.
They just kill them off camera.
Yeah.
Which is like, what? Like, what did it... that mixed with, I'm getting heated now, I apologize, but like that mixed with what you talked about, which is the end of the film being some of the dumbest stuff I've ever seen, which is just, it left me with this horrible feeling of like, you literally just feel like you can come into this, throw all this garbage on the screen because it's Predator flavored and make a ton of money and then set it up this franchise. And it really left me angry.
Oh man.
The only redemptive thing slightly about it was the camaraderie of sorts that was there between the soldiers, but that was completely manipulated, and it was dumb, and the humor was super lowbrow. Yeah. The thing about the original Predator is it had humorous moments, but they were there more to break the tension and to aid in moving you into stuff. Whereas with this film, it was like, we're going to highlight the humor and make that a big feature. And it didn't make any sense why Olivia Munn's character suddenly becomes like Miss Rambo, and she's like, I'm going to go around shooting her. It's like she's been a scientist her entire life. She's never been military trained.
She probably plays Call of Duty or something. Yeah,
it didn't make any sense why Quinn in this film became the character that he did. Like, it didn't make any sense for the military to treat him the way that they did. It didn't. So there's just so many things about it. Even like, I remember like we call it Predator because that just sounds cooler. Like stupid dialogue and stupid plot decisions, and just left me really feeling angry.
I get you, man.
So
I totally feel you on that.
That's why this one is my number 4.
Totally feel you on that. Let's bring it down to my number 4, and I don't think you've seen this movie. It's called The Titan.
I did not.
This is Netflix original as well. Sam Worthington stars in this one. Basically, this dude, it's post-apocalyptic, so that's why I wanted to watch it. I probably wouldn't watch it. So I was like, okay, so it's not apocalyptic, but it's like Interstellar, where we need to colonize another planet because Earth is dying. And so they're like, okay, we found this planet called Titan, but we can't survive there. So like, we have to adjust our DNA in order to be able to change how we are physically to live there. And so it's like this military family moves, and he becomes a test subject and starts to change, and it gets weird. Like it's kind of like The Fly a little bit, but not like scary good like that kind of was. It's more like The Fly, but then like it's so dumb. Okay, so
like, I'm having a hard time just explaining
it's just a dumb movie. It's I liked some elements of it, the setup, but I'm a huge like family being together person. That's like a favorite theme of mine in film, and reconciliation and all that stuff. And and this was just kind of forgoes that, and it's like, well, he's doing it for mankind, and then like, I don't know, it wasn't done well. There was some bad acting. And you didn't get a full scope of the Earth, dying, because it was a lower budget film. It was just, I guess it wasn't a disappointment because I really wasn't looking. It was just literally scrolling through Netflix. And I was like, hey, new movie. And it was like, oh, the Earth is dying. I was like, this is like Interstellar, and it's not even close. It was kind of a bummer. But The Titan, don't check it out, people.
There you go.
That's for you. All right, Joel, what you got? Number 3.
Number 3, we're getting there.
Yeah.
This movie, I'll just say the name, Robin Hood.
Hey.
This movie was the only film out of all the films, except for maybe the next one, that I really felt like was personally condescending.
Okay.
And we talked about this. Like, my title for this film is like Robin Hood, the condescension.
Joel, movie rant, go.
Yeah, there we go. No, I'm not going to do that. I will rant, but I'm not going to time it, because then I'll probably just continue on and on and on to see how long I can go. this film, literally from the get-go of the opening dialogue, starts telling you that you're pretty much an idiot for the things that you've heard and you understand about the Robin Hood saga. And I get what they were going for, which is like remove all of your boundaries and presuppositions and preconceptions of what Robin Hood is about. But the way they went about that from the very get-go was like, you're an idiot if you ever thought that you knew Robin Hood. And then from that moment forward, it set me up with like, okay, well, let's see what you got, film. And they constantly just let me down. And it's like constantly was like, well, how's that? Where's that? How? Because they set up like this weird world within Robin Hood where they turned what was this simple story of, the might of the small personal young, like the citizens, that they can turn it against the powers that be and stick it to them, that rob from the rich and give to the poor. And they try to turn it into this epic of like revenge, and there was like anti-Christian and anti-like religion undertones that were like mixed throughout the film that had no reason to be in there because it was completely pandery. It was one-sided. They're trying to act like,
pandery.
They were trying to act like, oh, well, the Christians are these horrible people, to the Muslims and the people that during the Crusades. And it's like, I'm not trying to justify the Crusades. I don't know very little about history, but I can guarantee you in that time period, the Muslims and the people that were fighting the Christians in the Crusades were not treating everyone lovingly. They weren't going around with like...
So you're basing this off of actual history.
Right.
And that's why you're disappointed.
Well, yes, because they tried to treat this like, I'm going to educate you on how this is supposed to be.
I still was thinking of it in fairy tale kind of language.
Yeah, but they try because they basically set it up like this is the real story. This is the true story.
I didn't feel condescended to, but
yeah, I felt condescended to. And then the whole entire like the rocket powered arrows. That was just I can't live that down. Like the fact that
rocket powered.
It was like a bazooka arrow.
They were just big arrows with big strings or whatever they used.
Big strings. Well, they had the one thing where they shot the dynamite and it like blew up.
Well, you strap a bomb to it, basically.
Yeah, it's just that didn't happen back then. They didn't have that.
You don't know that. You weren't there, Joel.
Okay, yeah, maybe in that moment they invented rocket artillery.
Okay.
So there were stupid things like that. The romance between the two main characters was completely forced and manipulated between Maid Marian and Robin Hood. Okay. It felt really silly and goofy. Jamie Foxx's Little John felt mean-spirited, and it didn't make any sense why he knew the things that he did within the film. It didn't even make sense how he knew English, since he came from like a Muslim land, how he knew that or why. And then it was like they made this big deal at the beginning about his son being killed, but then as soon as his son was dead, he was like, well, now I don't really care. They need to mourn. Ben Mendelsohn was the only good aspect of the film, but he was so cartoony over the top that it was kind of like I couldn't take it seriously. And the last thing I will say about this, my rant will then be over.
Rant over
and hashtag whatever, end quote, is I did not at all enjoy the way that the film... I'm not going to go.
Presented itself.
No.
Presented itself.
I could keep going. I'll stop. I feel like I'm just getting on board with this like rant train now. And it's difficult because these are my top 3 most disliked films of the year. But yeah. So I'll just stop there. Everybody's going to be like, well, I wanted to hear what you had to say. But no, I'm going to do it.
So my number 3, and I'm not going to say a lot about it because you already talked about it. It's Holmes and Watson.
Hey.
Movie's just bad. It's not funny. I don't know if I laughed. Here's the thing. This is what it feels like, and this is exactly what I speculated it looked like from the trailers.
Yeah.
That Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly were like just happened to be crossing paths to go like film movies in different parts of the country, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing this week?" "Oh, I don't know. Hey, you know what would be funny? What if we made a movie just like right now this weekend about Holmes and Watson, but it was like comical, and we just did that, and like that's what I felt like it was.
Yeah,
they just came up with stuff on the spot that they thought was funny because they had been hanging out and talking a bunch, and they were like, "Oh, we're really funny right now," and it was just like, "Hey, let's film that," and it wasn't good. And I think that they were just hoping for that John C. Reilly, Will Ferrell like team up power to like push them through to like make it a winner, and it's just not a winner. It's just a bad movie.
Yeah.
And you hit all the great points earlier. So
there you go.
That's it. That was my number 3. What's your number 2?
Well, let me just say.
What's up?
For my number 3.
Yeah. Robin Hood, you're going back to it.
I'm going back to it.
Oh
I'm going
my
to give it to
gosh.
you. I decided I'm going to give it to you. You can't give the main character the ability to just kill whoever, whenever, however with his arrows like that, and then suddenly think that there's going to be any mystery as to whether he's going to survive fights. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, rant over. So my top two, Matt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Top two, go.
I had a difficult time deciding between the two of these. Both of these films left me equally angered and frustrated coming out. I put them in the order that I did, not necessarily because at any given moment I feel like these two could flop place, but I had to put one in the top. I had to put one in a second spot.
Number two, what you
Really,
got?
the only reason I would put this one in the second spot versus the first spot is because of the characters and the acting.
Sure.
And I felt like I could. That's the only slightly redemptive because I like one of the characters or somewhat in the film.
Yeah.
So the film I'm talking about, and you're going to go, what? Because you kind of maybe like this film more than I did. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
This was a fun movie. It's not a great movie. It's not a particularly good movie, but I thought I had fun.
I did not have fun.
I had fun.
You say it was a fun movie. I say it was a dumb movie that had no fun to it at all. I mean, from the fact that dinosaurs don't cry, which they gave dinosaurs tears. They're
not real dinosaurs, Joel.
They're lizard dinosaurs. They're dinosaurs. They have no tear ducts. They're not created to cry. They don't cry.
They're not actual dinosaurs.
So that's
How do you know dinosaurs don't cry?
So that's one thing, Matt.
You weren't there in the Jurassic period.
The dinosaur winking and nodding to the camera knowingly.
He's a smart dinosaur.
But that, like, the winking and nodding to the camera with the whole, like, sad, Stegosaurus, I think, dying in the smoke, to, like, manipulate
Dude,
your
it's a Brachiosaurus. Come on.
Like,
this is like 5-year-old 101.
This whole film was like, what are you doing right now? I was just so angered thinking about where we've gone from the original Jurassic Park with, the amazing awe and wonder and craziness and violence and terror with, like, the good acting and special effects and amazing cinematography and scenes to you have them, oh no, we're trapped in this thing and lava's gonna get us, so we gotta get out of here quicker than get it. Like, it just was, like, so manipulatively stupid. I mean, like I said, the only reason that I put this one 2 instead of number 1
my table over.
was Chris Pratt, who I enjoy, and I like his acting in the film. Bryce Dallas Howard wasn't awful. Like, she was serviceable in the role, but it was it was literally like 2 films. You had, like, the film, which is them trying to do the island stuff. And then you had your separate film, which is like it was like an episode of Black Mirror or something like that, where they're, like, auctioning off the dinosaurs. And literally the very ending of the film, where I'm just going to spoil it, like, the little girl, because she's, who she is. I won't spoil that aspect, but because she is who she is, she ends up releasing the dinosaurs into the world, possibly injuring and killing thousands of people. And we're supposed to treat that like it's a good decision. Like, that was, like, horrible to me. At that point, the dinosaurs were in their enclosures. Yeah, they were being treated bad, but they were in there.
They were dying.
Special people would have come in and probably tried to put them into, like, holding containers so they could have been safe and stuff like that. They were dying. You're right. They were dying.
They were being gassed.
They were being gassed. But I'm like, maybe it's time. Literally, the only reason they put that there was because, like, they had to move this into, like, a third film, and now the dinosaurs are out.
Yeah.
It just felt completely stupid.
Jurassic World 3 Unleashed.
So I'm not going to keep going on. I could keep going on.
Okay.
But I'm not going to do it. You
all
gotta
right.
go.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
It's all right. I had fun with Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Okay. My number 2. Okay. Here's my number 2 and number 1 are almost the same movie.
Okay.
Okay. I one is no better than the other. I just had to put one in 2 spots, so I just picked one. Okay. Actually, I take that back. There's one element in the number 2 spot that I like.
Similar to me. There you go.
Okay. So number 2 is Truth or Dare.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Blumhouse film. I like Blumhouse, what they do. Their business model is fantastic. Not all of their movies are fantastic, but they've been doing better lately. Truth or Dare. The reason why it's higher than my number 1 spot is because the concept I thought was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically like Final Destination, but like this Truth or Dare. If you actually, like, play the game, you could die.
Yeah.
If you take the dare and you don't do it, you die, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of how it goes. This movie was really weird because it seems like this is going to sound identical to my criticisms of my film number 1. It's as if there's chunks of the movie missing. Like, they just, like, took out bits and parts, and you don't know how one person gets from one part to the other in the film. The acting, for the most part, is okay. But there's this one element I thought was creepy in the trailer, but it's not creepy in the movie. It's, like, kind of silly. it's like when they do this, they play the truth or dare game. There's like their faces get possessed and make this really like crazy like smile
I think I've
face.
seen images of that. Yeah,
they showed blips of that in the trailer. It's like, oh, that's kind of creepy. But in the movie, it's like this person's smiling at her weird. You know, it's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
And it just made it cheesy. Made it cheesy. You didn't know what was going on. The plot was bad. It's like went through 100 different rewrites. I think it came out at the beginning of the year, along with the other movie I'm going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
And it was just a bad horror movie. I like scary movies, and this was not a good one.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But yeah, Truth or Dare, no bueno, unfortunately. And Joel, that brings us to our number one.
Number one. Yeah. Okay. So I mentioned in our run up in our like
Jurassic World
mentions.
3, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
This dishonorable mentions that there was a film, Life of the Party, that I didn't put on the list, and that's because my
I know what your number one is.
Yes, The Happy Time Murders.
Yes, I knew that was going to be it.
Melissa McCarthy is not having a good year. Both of those films were really bad.
She might get an Oscar nomination.
She might. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen that movie either, but
Yeah.
it's got what's his face? I can't remember his name.
I think what I would say is the Melissa McCarthy comedy led leading comedy film era has probably come to a close.
Right, because the movie she's going to get an Oscar for potentially.
I've never seen a
drama.
movie kind of end that.
Yeah.
Some of the era of somebody as like this type of film star,
right,
with as well ending the era of a type of film as this film probably has done.
Right.
I think this has basically ended the idea of doing Henson comedy films for a good 10 years or so. I could be wrong. This film had so many missteps, so many dumb ideas. There were so many things about it that were just really poorly handled and poorly put together, even in the production side of things leading up to it. But the film itself is very, the best way I could say it is very distasteful.
Yeah.
It treats pretty much the lore, and not the lore, but like the fun of the Muppets and what that's put together over so many different ages and time periods. Like I remember watching The Muppet Show with my dad. I watched some of the Muppet movies. They've taken all that and basically, like if I had to not be super crude about it, but it's basically just put a giant dump on it. It kind of like, it takes everything you think is good about the Muppets and it goes, nope, because this. And it has just really stupid plot lines. It has really horrific like scenes with like violence and sexual stuff.
Yeah.
It has really over the toply stupid ideas that are mixed in with like Melissa McCarthy being part puppet. Like where does that even like how would that even work? Because puppets' internal organs are just foam, which I think they were trying to treat as like this funny thing, but they treat it as like a real serious plot point. So the movie was like trying to be like this off the wall zany comedy mixed with like a serious murder, drama, noir, investigation type film, and it missed in like every single count. There's no mystery there. There's no intrigue. There's no interest.
Yeah.
The humor was super flat and stupid and dumb. I felt like personally offended by like a number of the different jokes and stuff that they kind of threw out there. I can't mention some of them because they're that like distasteful and bad. Like if he was trying to, because this film was directed and partially written, I think mostly directed, but by Brian Henson, which is the son of Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets. If he was trying to take the film style of the Henson movies and go in a completely different direction, like he accomplished it.
Yeah.
If the direction is bad movies, like he nailed it. And the sad thing is like Brian Henson can turn out some decent like good movies. Like he did the Muppet Christmas Carol, and that was like a pretty good film for the most part. Yeah. So I don't know. I could keep going on. I could keep saying all this bad stuff, but
I gotcha.
It's one of the films that like if I had to tell anybody like don't go see a film.
It's that movie.
It's that movie.
Yeah.
Like from last year, like that was the least good film. You're not going to get anything redemptive from it. You're not going to laugh. You might even be offended.
Yeah.
So that's why. But there's nothing redemptive about it. And the last thing I'll say is I hope Melissa McCarthy kind of moves into kind of a a different style.
I think she might. She's getting some. I can't remember the name. It's like you were right. I can't remember the name of it. Anyways. Okay, so that brings me to my number one.
There you go.
Okay, number one is going to sound awful like number two, but it's because it's Slender Man.
Oh, jeez. I totally forgot about that one.
Yeah, this movie was because it came out in January, which for horror movies is not a good month for horror movies.
No.
This
Based
movie,
upon the very
this one actually does have, in more recent history, one of the weirdest like gaps in it that I felt like I've ever experienced in a movie. It's like, there's this whole like subplot that's going on that that just kind of gets forgotten about. And like, what? But it's like,
For the
that
sequel.
happens in movies sometimes, but like this one was more jarring than I felt like I've seen recently. And then, it is so cliche. It felt like Rings.
Okay. remember you
Where
talking
it's
about
like,
that.
Teenage girls, like the cliche stereotype, like, I don't even know how to personify that myself, but it's so cliche stereotype. There's chunks of the film missing. It seems like it's not scary. It's very much like Rings, where there's like scary images sometimes, and they're not scary images. They're just run-of-the-mill Rings images, which are just maybe off-putting, not scary. And wildly forgettable. As you said, you didn't even remember it came out this year.
Yeah.
I had to go back into the archives to be like, what did I see this year?
Yeah.
And that was one of them. And it was a bad time. I literally don't remember it.
Yeah.
Like I must have blocked it from myself.
I'll say this. It's funny how we keep talking about our different perspectives here, but it's funny how your worst film of the year is one that you just completely forgot about.
Yeah.
And my worst film of the year is one that I'm like,
You
I
hate.
am so angered by this film.
It doesn't take a
It's
lot.
just a difference of
It takes a lot
styles.
for me to get angry, but yeah. So that's it. That's our top 10 worst, unless we see something that we didn't get the chance to see that we want to throw.
Maybe
on that
we'll
list.
revise at some point.
Yeah, but anyways, that is our list. Guys, email us. Let us know what you thought about it. Again, we have the contest going on, so feel free to join into that. It's going to be great. You can hang out with us, go to the movies, and we'll probably have that another week or two going here.
Probably about a week. I would imagine.
A week. Yeah, by the time you watch us.
Yeah.
And then other than that, is there anything else, Joel?
No,
I'm missing
I think
anything?
I'm good. Just
We're good?
Yeah, connect with us. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Yep, all the fun stuff at Real Review Media, youtube.com/The Real Review. Let us know your thoughts, email us, and other than that, have an amazing day, and it's been real.
It's been real.